Why watch the video? The automation in the AEC industry is the topic that becomes more popular, and with the artificial intelligence, it becomes more accessible even for people who have very little knowledge when it comes to programming languages. Also, if you are tired of doing Revit tasks manually over and over again, this video might give you ideas how to automate it. In addition, these new skills will help you make less errors and be more efficient. And finally, it can boost your career, or it can even help you find your new passion as a programmer. We will cover the following topics: PyRevit installation, Pycharm installation. We will create PyRevit custom extension. We will familiarize with Revit API and PyRevit documentation. We will create Python script. This is part 1 out of 10 parts, where each part is more in depth. So, things to expect. By the end of 10 parts, you should have a solid understanding of how to automate Revit tasks, build your own scripts. The end result of part 1 will be your custom tab in Revit ribbon, which will include pull down button with icon and push button with icon. The push button will include a tooltip, and if I run the script, the output window will include logo and 2 tables showing total number of grids, number of pinned grids and unpinned grids, and number of monitored and non-monitored grids. Here you can see grid names, and here you can see, let's say, if grid is unpinned or non-monitored, you will see exactly which one. In my opinion, one of the best ways to learn is to repeat the whole process after me for the learning purposes. So please do so, and good luck. The first thing I want to do is to start a Revit session. At the time of recording, I'm using Revit 2024.1. Next, I'm gonna download PyRevit. If I go to Google, type PyRevit, then I go to releases, and I'm gonna download the latest release, which at the time of recording is 4.8.15.24089. Once the installer has been downloaded, from the downloads folder, I'm gonna double click on PyRevit exe file. Setup PyRevit window pops up. I'm gonna click next. I'm gonna accept the agreement and click next. I'm okay with the folder path PyRevit suggests, so I'm gonna click next. For now, I'm gonna leave everything as default and hit the next button. Click install. And finally click finish. And if I go to Revit, PyRevit should appear in the Revit ribbon. If you don't see it, try to close and reopen a Revit session. For now, I'm gonna create a folder structure on my desktop, load it to PyRevit, which will add a custom tab to Revit ribbon. Again, for now, I'm gonna create a folder structure and explain it later on, which should make a perfect sense. On my desktop, I'm gonna create a folder and call it PyRevit. And then inside PyRevit folder, I'm gonna create another folder and call it myExtension.extension. Check for spellings. Seems about right. And then inside my extension folder, I'm gonna create another folder and name it revitadvisor.tab. Inside this folder, create another folder and call it custom toolbar. .panel. And then inside this folder, create another folder and name it grids.pulldown. And finally, inside the grids.pulldown folder, create a folder and name it inspect grids.pushButton. Inspect grids.pushButton. Seems about right. When it comes to folders names, you can use your imagination. Just make sure it ends as explained and try not to use weird characters. Also, before loading the extension I just created, inside the inspect grids.pushButton folder, I'm gonna create an empty file and call it inspect_grids_script.py file. As well as that, I need to make sure that my Python file ends with script.py, which it does. If you wish, you can simply call the file script.py. Now I'm gonna go to PyRevit tab, PyRevit drop-down arrow, go to settings, and I'm gonna add a folder path to my extension, save settings and reload, which should add my custom tab to the Revit ribbon. Here you go, a Revit Advisor custom tab is right here. Let's explore the folder structure. Now, because I called this folder .extension, PyRevit understands that this is an extension. With the same logic, because I called this folder .tab, PyRevit understands that it needs to create a tab called Revit Advisor. And if I drill down with the same logic, because this folder is named .panel, PyRevit creates a panel called custom toolbar. If I drill down again, PyRevit understands that it needs to create a pull down called grids, which is here, my pull down called grids. And finally, because I named this folder .pushButton, PyRevit understands that it needs to create a push button called inspect grids. And here it is. Hope it makes sense. If I go to my custom tab, here I can see that what I'm missing is one icon for the pull down button and one icon for the push button. So let me take care of that. Okay, let's go to PyRevit drop-down menu, and I'm gonna click the icons 8 push button, which should take me to the icons8.com website. Here I'm gonna look for grid icon, and let's say that I like this one. I'm gonna click the download button, and I'm gonna make sure that I choose 96 by 96 pixels icon in PNG format. As far as I know, this is PyRevit's preferred format, so I'm gonna go ahead and click the download button. So if I go to the downloads folder, I'm gonna make sure that the image is called icon.png, and I'm gonna cut it to the pull down folder, just like so. Let's go back to the icons8.com website, but this time I'm gonna look for magnifying glass icon. So let me do that. And let's say I do like this one. Again, I'm gonna make sure that I download 96 by 96 pixels icon in PNG format. Same process in the downloads folder. I'm gonna rename it to icon.png. But this time I'm gonna cut it to the push button folder, just like so. Once the icons are in the relevant folders, named properly and in the right format, I'm gonna go to PyRevit tab, PyRevit drop-down menu, click Settings, hit Save Settings and Reload button. Once reloaded, I'm gonna go to the Revit Advisor Custom tab, and here I can see there is a grids icon in the pull down button and magnifying glass icon against the Inspect Grids push button. So far so good. It's time to do some Python scripting, and for that I'm gonna use Pycharm, which is an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. Let me go to Google and type Pycharm. Go to JetBrains website. Click the download button. I'm gonna scroll down and find Pycharm Community Edition, which is a free version, so I'm gonna go ahead and download the installer. In the downloads folder, I'm gonna double click Pycharm exe file. I'm gonna click yes. I'm gonna hit the next button. I'm gonna accept the default destination folder and hit the next button. For now, I'm gonna tick all the options and click the next button. Hit the install button. Okay, I'm gonna choose default option, which is I want to manually reboot later, and I'm gonna click finish button. I have rebooted my PC, so let me open Pycharm by double clicking on the shortcut icon on my desktop. For now, I'm gonna choose do not import settings. I don't want to create a new project, so I'm gonna click open, and I'm gonna try to find the folder, PyRevit folder, which I created on my desktop. And I'm gonna click OK button. For now, I'm gonna tick Trust Projects in Desktop and hit the Trust Project folder button. I'm gonna find the inspect grids underscore script.py file. Double click on it. That's it. I'm ready for scripting. If I go to Revit Advisor tab, and if I hover over the Inspect Grids push button, there is no tooltip. So that's the first thing I want to do, is provide a tooltip explaining what the Inspect Grids push button does. So if I go to Google, type PyRevit Notion, enter the website, I'm gonna find the developer docs. Next, I'm gonna find the anatomy of Iron Python scripts. And if I scroll down, and here they say that tooltips are displayed similar to the other buttons in Revit interface. You can define the tooltip for a script using the doc string at the top of the script. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm back to the Pycharm, so let me provide a tooltip within triple quotes. So I'm gonna say tooltip, then I'm gonna say displays a table of, pinned grids count, unpinned grids count, then monitored grids count, unmonitored grids count, and finally total grids count. Also, I'm gonna add version, and author. As explained in the PyRevit Notion, I have provided my tooltip at the top of the script within triple quotes. I think Pycharm saves it automatically. If not, try to click Ctrl+S on your keyboard to save it. Then I'm gonna go to Revit, PyRevit tab, PyRevit drop-down menu settings, and I'm gonna hit the save settings and reload. Once reloaded, I'm gonna go to the Revit Advisor tab, and I'm gonna hover over the Inspect Grids push button. And here I go, I can see my tooltip. The next thing I want to take care of is my push button name. Although I already have push button name, let me go to PyRevit folder. And because I named this folder inspectgrids.pushButton, the push button in Revit user interface inherits the name of the folder. But if I go to PyRevit Notion, here they say that when using the bundle name as the button name in Revit UI is not desired, or you want to add a new line character to the command name to better display the button name inside the Revit UI panel, you can define the title variable in your script and set it to the desired button title. So my preference is to name my push button this way through title variable. So let me go to Pycharm and do it. Again, in this particular instance, I don't need to use title variable because my push button name does not contain any weird characters that folder name cannot handle. But because I want the beginning of my script to be consistent across all scripts, and I may decide to add some characters that folder names cannot handle, I prefer to use title variable. Hope it makes sense. Also, I want to add context variable and assign it to doc project. So let me do that. Let me explain what it does. If I go to PyRevit Notion and find bundle context, click on it, and if I try to find doc project, here it says bundle is active when the active document is a project. So let's say if it's a family file, my push button is going to be grayed out or inactive, as I don't want my team members to start running inspect grids script in a family file, as they may click it by accident. So in other sessions, we will explore more options. Once that's done, I'm gonna go to Revit, PyRevit, and I'm gonna reload it. And if I go to my custom tab and check the push button name, I can see that it has been updated. So grid inspection reflects what I specified here. And let's say if I open a family file, for example, metric generic model, and then once opened, I'm going to go to Revit Advisor tab, I can see that the pull down is grayed out or inactive because my context variable is assigned to project, meaning that the bundle is only active when a document is a project. In this instance, it's a family, so it's inactive. Hope it makes sense. I am back to Pycharm, and for the next part of the script, I need to import relevant modules from Revit API library, PyRevit library, and Python library. Otherwise, Python and PyRevit will not understand what I want, and PyRevit will display an error due to missing imports in my script. For this particular script, I'm gonna need to import filtered element collector class and grid class from DB module from Revit API library. I'm gonna explain later on what this means and why we need it, so let me do it. From PyRevit, I need to import forms module and script module. I need forms to display the user interface message to the Revit user, and I need script to get the output window where my logo and two tables are going to be shown. You will see that in a minute. As well as that, let me import OS module from the Python library. I need that to get the file path to my logo. Again, it should make sense as we go along. Finally, let's get current Revit document. This doc variable gets the currently active Revit session, the one I'm looking at. This might look scary, but some of these variables and imports are going to be repeated in most of your scripts. So try to get your head around it and don't worry. Practice, practice, and one more time practice. It's time to collect the data. Since the purpose of this script is to check grids, I'm going to go to Google, type Revit API docs. I'm going to enter the website, choose Revit 2024, and I'm going to try to search for a grid class. And here I can see that it represents a single grid line within Autodesk Revit, and that's exactly what I need. Also here I can see that it belongs to Autodesk Revit.db namespace. So if I go to Pycharm, and here when I say that from Autodesk.Revit.db import grid, I import grid class from this namespace. Grid class from Autodesk Revit.db namespace. As well as that, if I scroll down under the inheritance hierarchy, I can see that grid is a subclass of element class. And most of the time to collect elements, I use filtered element collector class. So let me try to search for it. And here I can see that this class is used to search, filter, and iterate through a set of elements. And since grids are elements in the context of Revit API, that's exactly what I need. Also here I can see that filtered element collector class belongs to the Autodesk.Revit.db namespace. So if I go to Pycharm, I can see that my import is correct because I imported filtered element collector class from Autodesk.Revit.db namespace. My first data collection is going to be a grids of list. So let me comment it. And I'm gonna use snake style naming with the underscore and call my list grids all. If I go back to Revit API, filtered element collector class, and let me expand this. And I'm gonna choose this constructor, which construct a new filtered element collector that will search and filter the set of elements in a document. So what I need is specify filtered element collector and in round brackets document. So if I go to Pycharm, and this doc variable is this one, which takes currently active Revit document. If I go back to Revit API docs and find of-class method, which applies an element class filter to the collector. So what I need is specify of-class and in round brackets specify which class. So let me do that. As well as that, I'm going to use where element is not element type method, which will make sure that only instances of grids are collected, not types. So let me add this line to my script. As well as that, I'm going to use toElements method, which will return the complete set of elements that pass the filter. So what I need is to specify toElements and round brackets. So let me do that. And now I'm going to use print Python function just to check what I have collected here. So let me do that. Now I'm going to go to Revit and I'm going to try to run this script. And here I can see that it's a list of elements and these are grids. Looks good to me. I am back to Pycharm. The next thing I want is to create a scenario where there are no grids in Revit document. And since there are no grids, nothing to check, I want to stop the script and display a message for the Revit user. And for that, I'm going to use one of the PyRevit forms. So let me go to Google and type PyRevit documentation. I'm going to enter the website, go to forms. I'm going to press Ctrl F on my keyboard and type alert. And here I can see there is an alert form which shows a task dialog box, which shows a task dialog with the given message. I only need message, title, and I'm going to set OK to false. So let me go to Pycharm and do that. I'm going to comment this out for now. And let me type this first and explain it later on what this means. I'm relatively new to the Pycharm and I don't really like these spaces. I want to see tabs, so let me try to fix it. If I go to settings, general appearance, maybe I'm gonna take this one's. Let me check Python. I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna hit the OK button. Let me try this. Let me try that. Tab. Seems like I have fixed it. If not grids all is a conditional statement, which means that if grids all list is empty, a user interface message will be displayed to the Revit user stating the following: active Revit document does not contain grids, and this script will be stopped. If grids all list is not empty, this piece of block will be ignored. So let me show you what this conditional statement does in the Revit user interface. So if I go to Revit and if I try to run this script, nothing happens because my current Revit document contains grids. But let me select all grids, unpin them and delete them. And if I try to run this script now, a user interface message is displayed saying that active Revit document does not contain grids. Script is cancelled. Hope it makes sense. Let me undo it. Let's go back to Pycharm. I have collected grids. Now I need to extract another data such as grids names and check whether they are pinned and monitored. Again, let me go to Google, type Revit API docs, enter website, choose Revit 2024, search for grid class. And if I expand this, I cannot see any methods or properties that can help me get grids names, check whether they are pinned and monitored. And I think that's because these are grid specific methods and properties. But if I go to members, scroll down to properties, here I can see there is a name property which provides a human readable name for the element. And if I scroll up, here I can see that this name property belongs to element class. That's because grid class is a subclass of element class. So grid class inherits this name property from the element class. I'm going to use this name property to get my grids names. The name property returns string, by the way. Also here I can see there is a pinned property which identifies if the element has been pinned to prevent changes. Also here I can see that it returns Boolean, which means that if the element is pinned, it will return true, and if the element is unpinned, it will return false. So I'm going to use this pinned property to check whether my grids are pinned or not. Finally, I'm going to try to search for a method called isMonitoringLinkElement. I think that's the one. It indicates whether an element is monitoring any elements in any linked models. I can also see that it returns Boolean value, and here I can see true if this element is monitoring elements in a linked models, otherwise false will be returned. So I'm going to use this method to check whether my grids are monitoring any elements in any linked models. I'm back to Pycharm. I'm going to create another list. Let me write it and I will explain later on. So what I have created is a list of sublists, and for each grid in grids all list, I check grid name, check if it's pinned, and check if is monitoring link element. Also, I want to apply Python sorted function to sort the list in alphabetical order. Just like so. Let me print this newly created list and see if I get the data I need. So if I go to Revit and try to run this script, I can see that I get the data I need, which is a list of sublists. And let's say I'm going to take this as an example. I take the grid name, which is age, true, which means it's pinned, and is monitoring link element. As well as that, I want to create another list of sublists, which will contain total number of grids, numbers of pinned and unpinned grids, and numbers of monitored and non-monitored grids. But before that, I need to create counters, and I'm going to use for loop to iterate through elements in grids all list. Let me do it first and explain once it's done. I have created my 4 counters: count pinned, count unpinned, count monitored, count non-monitored, and I have assigned them to 0. And here I use for loop to iterate through each element or grid in grids all list, and I check for each grid, I check pinned property if it's true or if it's pinned. Count pinned counter is going to be increased by 1. Else, if it's false or unpinned, count unpinned counter is going to be increased by 1. In a similar way, I apply is monitoring link element method to each grid, and I check because we know that it returns Boolean value true or false. So if it's true, if it's monitoring link element, count monitored is going to be increased by 1. If it's false, if it's not monitoring any elements in any linked models, count non-monitored counter is going to be increased by 1. Hope it makes sense. Now that my counters are ready, I'm going to create a list I mentioned earlier. Again, this is a list of sublists. Here I use len Python function and I apply it to grids all list, which counts total number of elements in a list. So that's what I want. I want total number of grids in a project. And here I use string format, where I place my counters into placeholders, which are represented by curly brackets. So I place these counters into placeholders. And because these counters are integers, they will be turned into strings, which is what I want. I mean, it will make sense when I print the table, but for now, let me print it just to check that I get no errors. So let me go to Revit and run the script. Yep, this is what I want. It's a list of sublists, and here I can see it's a total number of grids, pinned 13, 0 unpinned, monitored 13, 0 non-monitored. So far so good. I have collected all the data I need, so it's time to prepare the output. And because I want to have my logo in the output window, let me go to PyRevit, icons, and let me try to find some logo. Let's say Python. Let's say I like this one. Let me try to download it. And I'm going to choose 96 by 96 pixel size in PNG format. I'm going to download it. And if I go to downloads folder, let me rename it to my logo, or let me change it to Python logo. I'm gonna cut it to my push button folder, just like so. To print this logo and two tables to the output window, I need to import output module from PyRevit. So let me go to Google, type PyRevit documentation, enter the website, find output. And here they say that it provides access to the output window and its functionality, and that's exactly what I need to print my logo and two tables to the output window. I have already imported script module at the top of my script, so let me add this line to my script. Next, I'm gonna go back to PyRevit documentation and search for image. And here I can see that output.printimage prints given message to the output. So let me add this line to my script. Okay, what I'm missing here in this bracket is a path to the logo. To get a path to the logo, I'm going to use Python OS module, which I have already imported at the top of my script. So let me write it first and explain it later on what all of that means. So let me explain what I have done here. This line determines the directory of the script. This line sets the file name of the image. And because my script and image are located in the same place, with this line, I join these two to get the full path to the logo. Let's try to put the logo path to these brackets, and I'm gonna try to run the script to see if logo prints to the output window. So let me go to Revit and I'm gonna try to run the script. I can see my logo in the output window, so far so good. I'm back to PyRevit documentation, so let me search for table, and here I can see that print table prints provided data in a table in output window. So that's what I need. I can see I need table data, which I've got, column names and title. So let me add this to my script. Okay, let me fix this. I'm gonna delete this as I no longer need it. So here I have my count data, which is this one, total number of grids, pinned and pinned count, monitored, non-monitored count. Here I have a list of columns which are strings, and title is also a string. So let me go to Revit and test it to see what I get. Okay, I still got my logo, which is good. This is table title, grids inspection results, which is this one. Then I have my column names, and I have my data. So far so good. Okay, let me take care of the second table. So I'm gonna copy this one, change this to secondary. I don't need table title. I'm gonna change that to grids data. I believe that's how I called it. Yep, grids data, and I'm gonna update my column names to grids, grid name, pinned, true or false, and monitored, true or false. I'm gonna delete this comma. It looks good to me. Okay, the script is finally fully ready, so it's time to test it. I'm gonna go to Revit and I'm gonna select all the grids, go to filter, and here I can see the total number of grids is 13, all pinned, and I believe all monitored. So let me run this script. I can see the total count is 13, which matches. pinned 13, 0 unpinned, monitored 13, 0 non-monitored, which is correct. Here I can see grid names, and here I can see all true, which means they are pinned, and here I can see true as well, which means they are monitored. But let's say, unpin grids A and B, run the script again. I can see here the count has been changed, so 2 unpinned, which is correct because I unpinned 2 grids, 11 pinned, 2 unpinned. And here, because I unpinned grids A, I can see false against grid A and false against grid B, which is correct. Now let me unmonitor, let's say, grids 1 and 2. Run the script again. And because I unmonitored grids 1 and 2, I can see false against those grids, which is correct. Let me do a final test. Let me unpin all of these grids and stop monitoring. So now all of these grids should turn to false. Yes, I can see 0 pinned, 13 unpinned, which is correct, 0 monitored, and 13 non-monitored, and all false, which means these are unpinned and these are non-monitored. So I can see that the script is working. Now I have a homework for you. Try to create a script that provides the same data but for levels.